In this video, we're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off from our takeoff and take a look at some of the basic instruments. So in an aircraft, you have a number of different instruments to help the pilot know basically what their current performance is, as well as what direction they're heading, and things like how fast you're doing it, how well the engine's running, if everything's smooth, things along those lines. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and paused myself in midair here so we can take a quick brief look, because everything we're going to be looking at in a minute is going to be made simpler if we understand what some of these different instruments are telling us. First things first is you have your airspeed indicator. You'll notice that my airspeed indicator is basically bouncing all over the place. You're probably going, why is that? The reason for that is because the wind is gusting, and as a result, that wind will actually adjust the speed. This is actually basically a dynamic pressure instrument, if you want to think about it another way. Important thing to know about the airspeed indicator is the green range is going to be the safe speed for just operating normally. The white range is going to be the safe speed for full flaps. The yellow zone is basically you can go in the speed if there's no turbulence, and the red line is your front windshield is going to fail and enter inside the cockpit speed. So you want to be very cautious with that. The center instrument is called our attitude indicator. This is basically what's going to be telling us how pitched up or left and right our particular instrument is, our aircraft, I should say. You'll note that it is adjustable. You can actually create this little miniature airplane here to modify this zero position if you're doing instrument flying. Big thing to know about this one is if you're pointing towards blue, you're pointing up. If you're pointing towards brown, you're pointing down, regardless of being in a cloud or whatever. The other thing worth noting is these little lines up here. These are going to be indicating how much bank angle you're using at a given moment. Keep in mind, this is not how fast you're turning, it's how tilted the plane is. There's a big difference with that. You can see right now we're relatively level. Clock, pretty straightforward. Over on this side, you have our altimeter. This tells us how high we are. This hand will tell us tens of thousands of feet. The long hand shows us hundreds of feet, and the short hand shows us thousands of feet. Note that the altimeter has to be set to the local air pressure in order to work. This is literally a calibrated barometer. To reset that, you can get that information from ATIS. You can use this little knob right here to read the pressure off here, or you can just press the B key on your keyboard to quickly reset it. On this side, we have our turn coordinator. This tells us how fast the aircraft is actually turning. If this wingtip touches this line, that means it will take 2 minutes to execute a complete circle. This is a wonderful tool if you're learning instrument flying. Underneath there, of course, we have an inclinometer. This is going to tell us if the aircraft is skidding. We'll see this in action in a moment. To the right of that, we have our directional gyro. It's worth noting that this directional gyro is changing position right now, even though the aircraft is not changing position. It is a gyroscopic instrument. Because of that, it is sensitive to precession. You have to be very cautious with that. To reset the instrument, you just got to look up here to see what your current heading is, and then use this little wheel here to go ahead and reset it. You can also press the D key on your keyboard to quickly snap it back where it needs to go. You can see how way off that thing was. I usually tell people if you're doing straight level every 15 minutes, if you're doing aggressive turning, it might be a lot less than that. And you're literally watching it precess as we're sitting here, even though we're not moving. This instrument here tells you how fast your aircraft is going up and down. In this case, we're doing 500 feet per minute upwards. If this were pointing 500 feet per minute downwards, that's how quickly we'd be going down. This also makes it easy to estimate how long it's going to get to different altitudes. The cool thing with this instrument is the fact that it also tells you how quickly your speed is changing as far as vertical goes, and that's what makes it so useful. All right, now that we've seen them, let's go ahead and see what they look like when they're all working together. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the nose down just a little bit. There we go. Give myself just a teeny bit of trim. I'm also going to reduce power here. I don't need to be ripping along too much here. Good. Now this turbulence is pretty noticeable, so it's going to cause everything to have a little bit of jitter to it. So now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and execute a nice 30-degree right turn. And there we are. So what do you notice about the instruments now? First things first is that we show that we're at 30 degrees. My airspeed indicator is constantly tweaking, but my altimeter as well as my vertical speed indicator is staying more or less the same. Whee! This turbulence is fun today. I love it. Go ahead and bring ourselves all the way back to north. Remember, the wind is coming out of the north today. Now, watch what happens when I pull the controls back. You can see my vertical speed quickly spikes, and of course that will stabilize. My airspeed drops down, my altimeter starts to climb, and you can see over there on the right that my vertical speed is increasing, as well as my HSI, which I don't have here. My directional gyro, of course, is I go in all sorts of nuts. Now I'm going to go ahead and push the nose over, which is very difficult to do in the real plane because you tend to get a little lightweight when you do it. And you can see my airspeed is now coming up. You can see my vertical speed is down. By the way, for reference, a 500 feet per minute vertical speed is going to pop your ears pretty bad. So if you did something like this and you had passengers on board, they would be mad. It's just something worth noting. Also, see how close I got to overspeeding the aircraft when we did that. And that is the basics of the different instruments. It's definitely going to get a little complicated. We also have an RPM gauge over there on the right, which you got to watch out for. We have these two CDIs here if we're doing any sort of special work with those. We have our fuel instruments as well as our engine instruments. We're actually a little high in oil pressure right now. It kind of doesn't surprise me, but again, it's something along those lines. Okay, hopefully this helps, and it's going to set up real nicely for doing cruise flight next. Enjoy.